So good evening. Welcome to everyone who's joined us tonight for tonight's performance in context with the Pacifica Quartet and soprano Karen Slack. I'm so pleased that you're here. I'm Jennifer Larson, president of Friends of Chamber Music. This Sunday, Friends of Chamber Music will present the Pacifica Quartet and soprano Karen Slack in a regional premiere of A Double Standard, a stunning work for string quartet and soprano by Baltimore-based composer James Lee III. This work was co-commissioned by Carnegie Hall, Chamber Music Detroit, and Chamber Music Cincinnati. The work is a setting of a poem by African-American poet, abolitionist, and suffragist, and teacher Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. I'm so pleased to have with me tonight two members of the renowned Pacifica Quartet. We have violist Mark Holloway, and we have cellist Brandon Vamos, and we have the exquisite soprano Karen Slack, whose videos I've been watching all week, and I'm so excited to hear you in person, Karen, and to hear what you have to say about music and mentoring. So beyond this collaboration, Karen and the Pacifica share a common passion for mentorship and a real adventurous spirit as champions of works by rising composers, emerging composers, this is the way I think our classical music tradition is going to survive and flourish into the future. I want to start with something everybody wants to know. They want to know how somebody becomes something so special and specialized as a classical musician. And I'm interested in this question from a community advocate for the arts point of view. Where are the points of access for students? How does one become engaged in it? And what does it take to make a musician? So I'm going to start with Karen. What was your earliest musical memory?
Well, I grew up in Philadelphia, and my parents loved R&B, soul music. So I didn't necessarily grow up in the church like many African-American singers. I grew up, going to church with my grandmas, but my mom and dad weren't, necessarily big church goers. So I didn't grow up in the grand tradition of like gospel music. I grew up listening to the radio. And also in the golden era of hip hop. I'm from Philadelphia. So, and Philly has a long, big tradition. We have opera, orchestra, soul, jazz, blues. So in Philly, you can always hear music playing everywhere. But how I got to classical music, I had a great ear. And back in the day, you had orchestra in every public school. Mm-hmm. And so my first instrument was not voice, it was violin. And I played all but 4 months. I didn't like it. And I think I might as well Brandon has someone giving me a cello.
That's where you should have started.
I should have started in cello, not violin. Yeah. Sound in my ear. But I didn't like it. But I could always count really well, match pitches, and so I led the Star Spangled Banner in the 6th grade. That was my first big solo, And, yeah, in middle school, my middle school teacher said, "Karen, you have a voice. You really need to consider singing." And I wanted to be a veterinarian. I had no interest in being a professional musician. And she encouraged me to audition for the High School for Performing Arts, which is where I fell in love with opera because my choral teacher loved opera. And so it was the first time I had heard a voice that sounded like mine, very big and loud and high, because I didn't grow up singing a lot of the gospel music, which is low and big, real chest voice. I just always had this loud, high voice. And so I fell in love with hearing Maria Callas and Jesse Norman. And I said, one day I'm going to do that. I had no clue. I don't know what I was thinking.
And then you did. And then you grew up to do that.
And I grew up to be an opera singer. Like, who knew, So I always like to give a background of how I got into opera, but to always say that my first entrance into music was through Black music, not necessarily church music, but through soul and R&B, hip hop, especially. So
Did that give you something special that you brought to classical music? A flexibility maybe, or
yes, I think so. I will say that I don't think I leave the soul out of my singing, no matter what kind of music I sing. So and that kind of that flavor that I love to add to the singing. So I absolutely think that that colors the way that I make music, and also the freedom of not being bound by how things are supposed to go. You know, the improvisation that comes out of hip hop, that comes out of jazz. I encourage, I lean into that. I try to, at least.
It gives you a swagger.
Swaggy for sure.
I
Yeah.
can vouch for it. She does. She definitely does.
She definitely has a swagger. So Mark, would you tell us a little? You're a violist. Did you start as a violist?
I did start as a violist. Well, I started piano maybe I don't know, around the same time, maybe a year difference. I can't remember. I grew up on Long Island and went to public school, and we had a really very strong music program in the public schools. You know, we did one day of art, one day of music, one day of gym, and we cycled like this. And so I had really good teachers that I'm still in touch with some of them. Played in the orchestra. We had to pick an instrument. I picked viola because I knew what a violin was, and I liked the name better, viola. And I also, I knew what the violin was, and I knew what the viola was, and I thought it would be more interesting maybe, and maybe a little more unique to pick the viola. And in fact, all of the violas were signed out, and I think I had to wait a couple months until they could, deliver new ones to the school. And but I sang in the chorus. We had general music classes, and I played in the orchestra, and just had really caring teachers. So I guess those are my first sort of musical memories. Don't come from a particularly musical family. My parents like to listen to music, but not classical. And then being from Long Island, we used to, all my friends in school used to go see Broadway musicals. And so then I said, hey, I want to go see them too. And so, because it was a special treat, we used to get front row tickets. And of course, I would just look down in the orchestra for the whole musical because I was really interested in what was going on down there. But no, I had really nice, caring teachers who sort of told my parents that I had talent and that I should, seriously think about pursuing it. But I never thought about it in a practical way. I just loved doing it. I used to love playing. I still love playing. I used to love playing along with old recordings and things like this because I didn't, I didn't really have another outlet to do it except for school orchestra. And then I started joining youth orchestras and traveling and things like this. And so yeah, I just, very lucky to have public school music classes. It really changed my life. That and summer festivals. I went to Tanglewood. That was the first one that really opened my eyes. And I knew I wanted to do this the rest of my life because of that. I heard some chamber music. I heard the Brahms Piano Quintet there. Totally sucked me in.
Karen, did you do summer festivals as well? Are there summer festivals for vocalists?
There are a few for chamber music, but more for opera. Of course, not as many opera companies in the summertime, but there's of course Santa Fe and Aspen, Glimmerglass. But I don't necessarily work a lot in the summer. But now that I'm doing more chamber music and more concert, it's opening more opportunities, which is great because you get to keep your chops up during the summer, relax a little bit, and actually keep your chops up during the summertime.
So, Brandon, I'm going to ask you a question that you guys can all weigh in on. I know that you come from musical parents. Both of your parents are renowned pedagogues, violin and viola. My son once took a lesson from your mom.
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah, I adored that lesson. I thought she was so lovely. Really enjoyed it. And I also know that so did you grew up in and around the university, is that right?
Well, they were always teaching at a university. I grew up in a small town in Illinois. When I was young, they were teaching in Macomb, Illinois at Western Illinois University. And of course, later on, they moved to Minnesota, and then they went to Oberlin and Northwestern. So they've been around, but that's where I grew up. And yeah, I mean, I was just kind of immersed in music since day one. My parents always had kind of an open house. So the students often lived in our house. At one point, we maybe had 5 or 6 students living in the house. So it was like a small music conservatory. You'd walk in the door and you just hear in different rooms people practicing and maybe playing chamber music and having a lesson, and then there'd be dinner, and it was in a way a little chaotic but pretty exciting. So I was around it pretty much my whole life and immersed in music. Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
I have 2 brothers. Yeah, I'm a middle child. Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason I asked that question is I know that Illinois has so many programs for youth, especially chamber music programs. Northwestern has one. There's I don't know. When I go to the fish-off competition, there are younger groups. This is under 18 groups from these programs, and it's remarkable, remarkable. Yeah. And I think it provides a lot of support, maybe. So,
well, Chicago's an amazing city. My parents have taught there. Even when I was living in Macomb, they would go on the weekends to Chicago, and there's some of the most huge amount of young talent in Chicago, and these great music schools that like the Music Institute of Chicago. They're all over the city, and they develop these fantastic students that you probably see at Fish-Off.
Yeah, it's totally impressive. Totally impressive. So, what are the sorts of things that allowed you to persist? I mean, this is a really hard thing to do. For a kid to practice when they might want to play soccer outside or go shopping, or what are the things that helped you get through that period of like age 12 to 18, maybe even?
In my case, I have to say it was pretty innocent. I didn't do a lot of practicing. I did a lot of playing. Nobody was trying to groom me as a violist or a musician. They just let me enjoy myself, and I did some work, maybe not as much as I should have or could have, but I just loved playing, and that was the reward. And now, as an adult, the repertoire is still the reward. I feel like, I've said this before to, when people ask, that I feel like, let's say you were an art historian or something, you get to study Rembrandts and things like this, but you don't get to like touch them and take off layers of paint and change the frames around. And, we get to take Beethoven quartets and brand new pieces and just, zoom in and examine the biggest details, or the smallest details to the big picture, and really, touch it with our fingers, and really bring it to life. And so, of course, it's great just looking at it on the page. It doesn't make it any less great, but people need to hear it, and I need to experience it to get fulfillment. And so I feel really lucky that, as a musician, it's such a living, breathing art.
Did you had friends then? It was your whole social structure?
Yeah, I had friends, sure.
Around it.
Sure, absolutely. High school orchestra, and then summer festivals, things like Tanglewood that I went to. And then other people my age who lived on the island, we used to get together and read chamber music. And there was a violist in the New York Philharmonic whose wife was a cellist, very nice freelance cellist, and their kids played instruments, and they had friends, and they were around my age. So we used to always kind of get together on Friday nights and read string quartets.
Oh, wow.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Do vocalists do that kind of thing too?
I think, because, for classical music, I think we do at the conservatory level, because singers start so much later. The instrumentalists, they have the advantage. There's no way, the voice matures in its 40s. So when you start singing at 18, 19, 20, Lord knows, you don't know what kind of sound you're going to have, or depending on what kind of teacher you have, so many people decide that their career is not for them. So the potential never becomes a professional, you never see the potential blossom into something because people go, yeah, this is not for me. But I do remember when I was 14 or 15, I think my first or second year in high school, there was a program at the University of New Hampshire that were taking singers from disadvantaged communities, I guess you could say, you know. And there was a free summer program, and I got into that program, and we studied opera. So I was around other 14, 15-year-old kids from like DC and Boston, and, you know, myself from Philly, who wanted to do opera and instrumental, you know, music. And so that's where you sort of find your people, you know, I think through these programs. And people always say, oh, you know, I don't know anybody who sings opera, or I don't know any like Black artists who sing opera. I'm like, everybody in my sphere is an opera singer. Or I mean, I went to Curtis, so I'm still very close friends with so many people that I went to school with. Or there's not an orchestral a concert hall when I'm doing orchestral things that I walk across the stage that I don't see someone that I went to school with in my 6 years. So it is sort of this community, you know, even when I joined the roster of MKI, where I got to meet the fantastic Grammy Award-winning Pacifica Quartet, you know, when Mark reached out to me to like collaborate with them, I was like blown away. And then he's a Curtis grad too. So again, there is this community of people that you do find, you do find. And of course, I still have some of the same friends I grew up with. So I have people who don't do anything, you know, they work regular 9 to 5, or, you know, stay at home parent. They all have parents. I'm a fur mom. I have no desire to have children. Anything like that. So I do have this collection of people in my life that, you know, it's a very diverse. And if it was not for classical music, I know that I would not have this kind of like colorful, full life outside, addition to performing, but outside, that I'm like actually friends with these people, you know?
Yeah. I used to ask, I had young ensembles come to a festival I did in Abu Dhabi. And I used to ask them, if you had children, would you want them to do music? And I got a couple of different answers. The funny answer was no, unless they were very, very talented. So that was one answer. and the answer I really liked came from somebody in the Aeolus Quartet, and he said, yes, because there's nothing I can think of that would give you so many friends in so many places. And I thought that was really great, because that gets at the heart of the social nature of making music, which I think is really important.
Right.
Yeah. So if you had one thing you would tell people who wanted to advocate for music for youth that they could get behind and support, what would it be?
Well, I think you just mentioned, you know, it's a way of meeting people and sharing. I mean, especially chamber music is all about sort of sharing and listening and compromise and trying to come together to make something together, you know. And so I feel like, you know, good musicians are also good listeners and good team players, because you have to, you know, you have to take solos, you have to support others, you have to add to the, you know, texture of you know, like the fabric of music. You have to make other people shine and sound good. You have to help them when they need your help, if they need, you know, if they're struggling with a tempo, or, you know, whatever the thing may be. And I think that this really can help you in society, just, you know, seeing that other things are possible, because, you know, other people have good ideas too, and that you have to listen to others and let other voices come to the forefront, and you know, to share and to compromise, I think is really useful. And it makes us, you know, better people, more open-minded, more tolerant.
It develops skills that are useful beyond music as a
Absolutely. Traveling does that too. I mean, you know, all the traveling we do as musicians, you know, from the first summer festivals you go to when you're, you know, making a career, you just see that other people do things differently, and sometimes it's a lot better, and sometimes it's different and more beautiful, and as beautiful, and you know, with a different viewpoint. And I think it's very humbling, you know, to, you know, I was just in Greece, for example, and I don't speak a word of Greek. It's amazing to be lost in another culture. It puts you in your place in a good way.
It does. It does. I'm about to leave for Nigeria.
Wow.
In January, we're moving to Nigeria.
Wow. Good for you.
Wow.
Sounds very exciting.
another stint abroad
It was very exciting.
for a few years.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm totally excited. I'll be involved with an art school, a school of art.
Really?
School
Oh,
of
that's
African
incredible.
art. Yeah. So I want to get to mentors and teachers. And the reason I want to talk about this is that as an observer, it's a rare kind of training musicians get. It's usually one-on-one. There's one student and one teacher in a room, and that student is then accountable to that one teacher. I mean, you're also accountable to your friends in the ensemble and and you do work with your teacher, your conductor, but there's a lot of this one-on-one kind of dynamic. So I wonder if you might tell me something about your favorite mentor or mentors and what it was about them that you thought was especially effective, that maybe you have taken on in your approach when you work with young students or younger musicians.
I mean, there's so many, if you look at your life, of course, the teacher that I had from age 6 to 17 taught me how to play the instrument. The really difficult teaching of, the training, the technical training, and that you need from day one to really have control over your instrument. But later on in college, I had my teacher, Paul Katz, was in the Cleveland Quartet. And so being around him and hearing the quartet and getting an idea of his lifestyle, I mean, that influence, obviously it shaped me in so many ways, because I started to think about the possibility of playing chamber music, and knowing that repertoire and how much he loved it really influenced me in so many ways. So, and I think what I loved about his teaching that it influenced me is how he was able to simplify things. He could even a word or two would change the way a passage would sound. He had that ability to come up with a phrase or a word, or to talk about like a character that put the whole piece in a different framework, and it just changed the playing immediately. I always try to emulate that if I can. It's I don't think I have his skill in that, but I've had so many great mentors throughout my life. I've been lucky.
Karen, what's it like as a vocal student when you're younger and you have because your instrument is your instrument is yourself, which is, I think, makes you especially vulnerable.
Yes, you can't put it in a box and walk away from it.
Carry it around.
Yeah, no, every emotion, every good thing that happens to you, every bad thing, and everything in between affects your instrument. Not even to not drinking enough water, not getting enough sleep. As I tell Mark, he's always trying to make me do bad stuff. So
what?
I'm good. No, I know. I mean, just hanging out just a little bit longer. So this is like public. So no, Mark, it's all good. No, but I'm always like, I can't go and talk too long. I can't like sit in loud places if I had to perform. If I'm, trying to be my optimum, can't have that extra glass of red wine because or have red wine at all before performance, or next day because it just dries me out. And anyway, just all those things. But my favorite, I have had quite a few mentors, but the two things that I learned is that going to live performances was extremely important of other artists, and more people who did more than just sing is very important. And also how to listen, how to take information in, and how to listen to the art, what to, not necessarily what to listen for, but what is the thing that made you, why did you have a reaction to something, and try to identify what was it about that performance that moved you and touched you. Helps me understand music better when I go hear other people play. And my mentors have always encouraged that with me. And all my friends are like, I don't know how you go to live performances and perform at the same time. I'm one of the few people who love to go and listen to my colleagues. And so, and the people I don't know, I enjoy that. And I live in Philadelphia, like we get all kinds of people. So like, it would be crazy to me when I'm home not to take advantage of those things. But it informs me to become a better performer. When I listen, I think that my mentors have instilled that in me.
I mean, it's sort of a generosity of spirit that leaves you open to other people's possibilities.
Absolutely. And I try to instill, I try to instill in the singers that I mentor, you know, sometimes it gets down to knowing what exactly you love and what exactly you don't like. You know, you have to learn how to have taste, or learn to understand what that actually means, why you don't like something, why you love something, why something was moving to you, and also to have an opinion, to be able to discuss the art. Like you know, not to discuss from a place of ignorance, but a place of knowledge, and not just saying empty things, you know, like critics. Which sometimes I question whether or not they go to performances or not. You know, like, were you even at the same show that I was at? The one I sang in, like, were we at the same thing? Like, you know, it's kind of crazy sometimes. But again, like, you have to encourage that with the younger artists. You know, this is not something that happens by chance, happenstance. Like, you are an active member in this community of art. That's what I expect from people who mentor under me.
Yeah, I have a question that is sort of a branch off of that before we go on. So you mentioned that women's voices in particular mature, operatic voices mature very late, maybe into the 40s. Is that traumatic? When that happened, was that traumatic for you? Were you thinking, where is this all going?
Yeah. Well, you have two or three vocal transitions. It happens in your late, depending on what kind of voice type you have. With my kind of voice, which is big lyric spinto, 27, 28 is a big vocal change. And then into your late 30s and 40s, because you have menopause and all those great things that happen in your late, you know, into your middle, late 50s or whatever. But again, yeah, it is it's constant. And no, I'm going to keep it real, because that's what everybody loves about me. I have been like, forget this. I don't want to sing anymore. I'm done. I have quit more times in my mind, like, you know, than I'm even comfortable with admitting, but that is a part of it. Yes, I've been like, F this. I don't want to do this anymore. It's too hard. Like, it's too many things that I have to change about myself, and all of these things to fit into this box, you know. And I don't think we talk enough about those. How do you break through those career transitions? How do you break through? How do you continue to stay in it when the industry says one thing? You know, like for me, I was straight opera for like 15 years. And then I was finally able to admit that I had this love for chamber music. I had this love for recital. I had this love for collaboration and new works that I was not able to express, you know, because I had to be like, you know, racehorse, blinders, but it wasn't feeding me in a way. And it wasn't until the pandemic that I was able to be like, you know what, I'm going to be who it is that I'm meant to be, who I want to be, you know, and still hopefully I can make money doing it. You know, it became less about having this big, gigantic opera career and more about just being an artist and being happy and working with incredible artists who appreciated me and my fullness coming into their space.
Yeah, you see why we like making music with Karen.
I can see why. Well, it just seems like, having experienced those sorts of scary transitions yourself, it probably makes you a much more perceptive and sensitive mentor as you help others navigate those transitions. And I think there's similar ones in strings too. And the reason I think this is, both of my sons are violinists, and they are 6'4", but they weren't 6'4" when they started. And when you go from being a tiny 12-year-old to a 6'4", 17-year-old, that messes with your violin playing in ways that are really traumatic.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think, like, you know, Karen's saying that the voice changes. This happens to string players at this age. They grow, and so much of what you do is based on your hand shape, or, you know, a stretch, or the way the instrument fits in your body. And so it can be really challenging. I can imagine for your son when he became 6'4" with a small violin that creates some dilemmas, but he's obviously handled it well, huh?
Well, I mean, he's a grown-up now, so he's figured it
Yeah.
out. And
Yeah.
actually, he figured it out with the help of a very tiny violin teacher.
Oh, really?
He had a very small violin. Victor Danchenko wasn't a very big man.
Oh,
And-
yeah, I know him.
Yeah.
Yes. Or I knew.
Yeah, but he was very sensitive to this, didn't panic, really listened and really helped him straighten it out. But and watching it, I mean, I didn't watch it all the time, but sort of secondhand, it made me think that not just in music, but as a teacher of anything, these times when someone is going through a transition, it's really, really, it takes a very special kind of mentor to get people to feel confident again and not lose faith in themselves.
Yeah, luckily we have, music to nourish us the whole way, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the other transition I think that is a coming into oneself kind of transition that requires another kind of mentor. Like when musicians stay in situations where they have teachers for years and years, like, they can be 28 and still studying with somebody, or 32 and still go back and play for somebody. And it seems like there's a point where most of the musicians I know are really trying to find themselves. Like, am I this kind of player? Am I that kind of player? Is this what I want to say? And I wonder if you might talk a little about how you help an ensemble find its identifiable self, or an individual find their identifiable self. Because you can't be everybody. I mean, not everybody has huge volume or can play really fast, or I don't know what the comparable thing would be in vocal music, but they have to find themselves and be happy with themselves,
Yeah, I think for singers, and I won't take too much time with that. It's tough because you are born with the instrument you're born with. There is no, like, oh, I want to be a Wagnerian soprano, but I'm a light lyric soprano the sixth Mozart. Like, if that's what you're born with, you're probably never gonna wind up being a Wagnerian. But so you have to be comfortable with the instrument that you're born with, and you can work on it, you can mature, you can do the things. But if you step out of the repertoire, the nature, you can ruin your instrument, right? You only get one voice. If you break a string on a violin or a cello, you can go get another one. If you break a string here, it's the end of the career. And so I think there is a lot of having to come to terms with accepting who it is that you are, and also accepting what the industry dictates, because the industry dictates what it needs. And so sometimes you can have this gift and it be the wrong time. It could be wrong era, all those things. So you have to come to terms with those things and lean heavily into other skill sets that you have. Yeah, it's tricky. And also there's only so many positions as an opera singer, and particularly as a concert singer as well, because there's not, especially when you have a big voice, there's not a lot of openings to have a sustainable career as a chamber music vocalist if you have a big operatic voice that fills up 3,000 seat houses. Like, they don't necessarily meet. Unfortunately, I hope that myself and fabulous ensembles like Pacifica can change that. We can usher in more opportunities for ensembles and artists like myself, voices like myself, to we can breed a new repertoire, because it just doesn't exist the way it needs to. So there is a lot of like figuring out the instrument that you're born with versus what it is that this discovery of what it is you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I personally I love your powerful voice in the quartet. It's exciting for us to have this collaboration because it's so powerful. It's expressive and yeah, it's great for us. I would say that with the groups that we've mentored, at IU, what's interesting about a string quartet is that you have 4 unique voices, so it's never going to be the same. There's always something interesting about the combination of any four people. And the goal when we're working with quartets is that they can find their own voice and what's unique about them and what they have to say through the combination of those particular four people. And that's always exciting to work with, because when you're working with them, you never know what the product's going to be. And it changes within a month. It's amazing what a quartet will sound like, and 3 months later, they sound completely different. With the individuals, I think it's different as well, because you're always trying to find out what their strengths are and encourage those strengths, as opposed to sort of dictate, well, this is how I play. And I had a great teacher in grad school who encouraged that, having different colors in your sound and trying to figure out what made you, what was your individual personality. And so I think these things are important when you're working with students, that they don't feel controlled, but encouraged.
Yeah. I loved what you just said about teaching from their strengths. You help them identify their strengths and then encourage the growth from that side. Yeah. So I want to talk a little about mentoring ensembles versus individuals a little bit more, because I happen to know the Verona Quartet really well, Pacifica, that you have mentored, and they're now on faculty at Oberlin. And some things I know about what you did in mentoring them that they brought up was everything from how to be the quartet from the business side to the kind of managing side, how you decide I'm going to block out this amount of time for, things other than music, that there were all kinds of things about how to do it, how to be the artist / business. I wondered if you might sort of talk about those sorts of aspects that are really important, you think, to, when you're working with an ensemble that is planning to go on and try to make a career of it, that you think is important.
Yeah, I mean, these are skills you don't learn in school. We never learned any of that. And when our quartet started, we didn't know what a quartet was, really. We didn't know that it was, in a way, a small business, and there were so many things behind just sounding good. Of course, that's your main focus, and that takes hours and hours of work. But the career part doesn't happen. It's not just thrown at you. You have to go out and make it happen. And so the Veronas, they're amazing musicians, but we wanted them to have an understanding of the field that they were getting into. And that's what we've done with the other quartets that followed them. They just happen to be amazing people who have a knack for that too. They know how to, and a lot of what we do as a quartet is the social side of things, how to relate to people, how to talk to people. And that, for them, that was not a problem, but they were very interested in that side of things. And we had a lot of conversations with them about how to start their career, things that could help them, understanding, I think the biggest thing is that what they need to know is that they have to make things happen. They can't just be passive. You have to go out there, you have to reach out to people, you have to play for people. And then the more people who know you're playing, the more opportunities come your way. And I remember that from the beginning of the Pacifica Quartet. We were constantly playing for the established quartets. We were calling presenters. We were really actively trying to build a career, and it was hard. I remember not liking doing some of that. I felt very awkward about it, and the others in my quartet were more confident in that way. But I remember firsthand these opportunities that were coming our way because of that effort, and of course we wanted to play our best. And so I always want these younger quartets to know that there's a lot more behind what they need to be doing if they're going to actually become a string quartet and play this amazing repertoire.
Mm-hmm. So how old were you when you first, the Pacifica, I'll point out, has had a couple of membership changes, but when you originally formed, how old were you all?
Well, I was 24 and Samin was 21, and the other original members were from California and were friends with Samin, also the same age. So we were right out of school, and really didn't, this is when string quartets, the chamber music world was sort of taking off. So before that, you had a few quartets that were successful, like the Emersons and the Juilliards but all of a sudden there was this explosion, and it became a real reality that you could be a string quartet and survive. And so when we first got together, it was a very exciting time, and we moved to Chicago, and we were rehearsing 7 hours a day, and we had very little money. We got a little residency at a small school, the Music Institute of Chicago we were talking about earlier. And just over time things happened, but it was an incredibly exciting time for string quartets of that age. And for us, we were very busy, and we worked really hard, and it wasn't easy. You see your friends, and they're getting orchestra jobs, and they're buying cars, and we struggled for quite a while. But we were also playing Beethoven quartets, and it was exciting, and we started traveling. And so I'm so glad that we stuck with it, and just had such a great life in music, playing in a quartet.
Mark, you were in a previous quartet, right?
No, I was never, I was a freelancer before I joined the Pacifica Quartet. So I played many string quartets and lots of other quintets, trios, sextets, everything like that, and lots of orchestra also, and some solo things. But no, I was never a member of a quartet.
So how did you land this spot?
Just got an email out of the blue. They were looking for a violist.
What happened?
They were looking for a violist, and they'd heard about me, I suppose. Music world is small and large at the same time, and so I guess my name had come across their radar, and that was that. We read together, and the rest is history.
So when you read with them, did it feel special? Could you tell?
Yeah. Well, I could tell it was playing at an extremely high level, and just obviously a group that's just aligned. They're just on the same page, and we share musical values, and it felt very comfortable, and I just respected their playing immediately. Yeah, it's very clear that they had just lived in this world of quartets, of communication, of performance, of repertoire for a long time. So it was really a real treat to be invited to join them. A thrill. So
this is a good time to talk about how it is when you expand out by one player, and the one player a vocalist. Do you have to listen differently? What is it?
Sure. Yeah. With something like a singer, not just any singer, but Karen, or a wind player, like a clarinetist, let's say, it's tied to the breath. And so, we think about breathing when we play and taking a breath, like we say these things, but they actually need to take a breath. And there's text that needs to come across, and there are consonants and vowels, and that affects timing, and it affects resonance, and it affects length, and it affects tempo, and all these things. And so we listen in a different way to make sure that we're, of course, not covering someone, but we listen like that for ourselves too, to make sure that the right voices are coming out at the right times, so to speak. But with Karen, there's no chance of covering her. She could beat me to a pulp at 8 in the morning, I'm sure. But but yeah, no, we're always listening to make sure that the balance is good, and that things are clear, and that it works for the text, that it's not too fast, or that it's not too thick, or things like this. She can talk to that. And the same with wind players, like clarinetists. Of course, the instruments kind of blend in a different way. It's it's, it's not that we're against each other. It's not so different that we can't blend, but the great composers have written for these ensembles and combinations of instruments, and you start to get a beautiful possibilities of sounds and timbres and textures.
So like, if comparing playing with a clarinetist versus playing with a vocalist, I mean, the clarinet sound, when they're done blowing, it goes away. So is it harder to play with a clarinet? I would imagine it's harder to play with a clarinet than with a great vocalist.
No, I think it'd be hard to generalize. I mean, what I find difficult playing with a singer, just in any situation, like whether it's just a small group or even with a symphony orchestra or whatever, is just understanding the clarity of the text, which I assume that they think a lot about, because you're telling a story, and I shouldn't speak for Karen, but I want to make sure that I'm understanding what they're saying, because that affects everything from the way that it was a text painting, the way that the music is shaded underneath them. I want to make sure that I'm sort of supporting what they're doing. But just because we might be making a lot of noise, and if you're in an orchestra, let's say you're making a lot of noise, you got to make sure you're hearing clearly what the singer is saying.
Mhm.
So Karen, what is it about chamber music you especially like? What?
There's no conductor telling you what telling you how it's supposed to go. Their interpretation, the freedom. I have to say, now I'm more comfortable. But the first time we did the James Lee piece was freaking Vow Recital Hall at Carnegie Hall. Like, that was the first, and then Shriver was our second performance, and it was just like, you again starting at the at the top. So that speaks to a lot of our professionalism, but they invited me into their program, which I was so grateful for, to be able to be in that space again.
No, we were grateful that you accepted.
No, but it's so different. And I guess so I have to talk myself out of being intimidated, because yes, of course, I recognize my gift, and I do see it as a gift, and I love making music. I enjoy making it, but it still is like, as a singer walking into a space or instrumentalist, we're all trained in a way that it's like, oh, here come those singers, they're all divas or problematic or whatever, because we have this stigma, of being difficult. So it always is. And also, again, like, instrumentalists come to their instruments so much sooner, than singers. We don't learn how to read music until later, and all of the things. And then, singers, you have to learn the languages, you have to learn all of the styles, you have to learn all of these things, and you're almost fast-tracked so soon into it. So I always have that but once you start making the music, all the bets are off. Like, you just do the thing. And so for me, I find chamber music helps me to be a better singer. And in everything that I do, the listening, the even the text, like, it has to be much clearer. If I'm singing for 2,500 seats, it is about sound. It is about, especially in a place like the Met, where they just care about the sound going out. Like, you have to be heard. And so in this, I can sing as soft as I want, as loud as I want, and knowing with whom your entrances, who you're getting your notes from, and even with the three, I think this is what our fourth performance has evolved so much. And the last time we did it, we didn't really have a rehearsal. We just like jumped in the rehearsal, one performance. And even in the time between the last time we did it and this time, it just was so elevated, because they're just incredible musicians. And I just was like, wow, it's different. It's different, and in opera, you're together for 4 weeks, and you can't wait to be done by the 5th week of, being with people, doing that one thing. And
you don't have time to get sick of us.
I know, right? Until we do our tour next year or whatever. Get rid of her, but anyway, yeah, it is all of the things that I feel like chamber music allows me to do all of the things that they told me I had to be able to do as an artist.
That's amazing. So do you think young singers, as they're training themselves up, do you think they ought to try this?
They absolutely need to try it. Not only because it helps you become a better artist, but because it's another stream of income. It is another way to, and also a way to practice your art, to continue to make your art. If you're waiting for your manager to call you and give you another opera job, like it's just not like it. We have to be training artists to be to have the to be comfortable under the umbrella of making art. It is just about making music, you know, and get out of these boxes and these categories and all of these things. And so many people never get an opportunity to see their potential lived bigger and bolder because they're stuck in these boxes that the industry creates. So yes, I always, and that is one of my goals, my missions in my career, is to push to make sure that this relationship between the string quartets and myself and other chamber music, like to make it not this kind of veil of like, oh, we're doing this thing over here, but that it is also a part of the complete how we train artists. We have to. You have to. There's no other way to do it in the 21st century.
Well, and from a developing audience standpoint, you know, in times when the audiences are sort of dwindling, getting older, I think the freshness that these sorts of collaborations brings to the stage, and the potential for adding modern perspectives, you know, is very high. Yeah, so I think it's tremendous. I'm really happy that you're going to do this in the program on Sunday. I noticed that we only have 2 minutes left. I want to tell those of you who are here tonight that you can hop in and ask a question if you like, or you can type it into the chat box. And before we go, I'm wondering if you would tell me about your favorite composers or compositions, old or new, that you feel like over all this time you've come to be with them.
Well, it's impossible to say, but something I'm thinking about is how much I love the Dvorak quartet that we're playing. I had always wanted to play it, and I did when I was in school. And it's very late Dvorak. There are 2 late great Dvorak quartets, the G major and the A flat, and we're playing the A flat, which I just adore. I just love Dvorak in general. Just the honesty. I mean, it's my impression that he speaks from the heart, honestly, open, heart on his sleeve, no emotion held back, and I really appreciate that. It's music for people who love music. I think, you know, music for people who love life. I think. In fact, the slow movement he finished on Christmas Day, and you know, he wrote that on the bottom of the music, and I think it's a magnificent piece, and just so soulful and heartfelt, and yeah, I'm just so at the moment that's my favorite piece. How's that?
And I'll say for those who are here with us in the audience, this is a really special chance to hear this Dvorak. It's not as often played as some of the others.
True, that's true, man.
Okay, well, with that, I have to tell you, this has been a total blast. And I want to thank you for giving up this time this evening to be with us.
Nice to
meet you. I can't wait to see you in person on Sunday. And yeah, it's going to be tremendous. And thank you all for coming.
Thanks for having us. And
yeah,
we look forward to Sunday too.
Yeah. Can't wait to see you, Karen.
I can't wait to see you guys. I'm here in Boston. I'm doing a residency at the conservatory. So
are you really?
Yeah, so I'm not that far, but yeah, I can't wait to see you guys. It'll be a nice.
So we're looking forward to it. It's gonna be great.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Jennifer.
Good night, everybody.
Bye,
Good night.